Friends, let's get political. Welcome back to the ecoChristian podcast, where we're exploring what it means to be Christian on planet Earth. I'm your host, Caleb Cray Haynes. You know, one of the things that caught me off guard many years ago studying theology at the time is how much we talked about polity. What is the polity of the kingdom of heaven? Are you with me? Because God's kingdom comes with a way of life. It comes with a polity. It comes with values that embody love and reciprocity and humility and selflessness, right? What's the politics of the kingdom of heaven? And I would say perhaps, and even stand on the shoulders of great thinkers like George MacDonald, who would say then justice is found within those things. Politics is about how we do life together, right? It's the code of ethics that permeates the decisions that make up the structure of our everyday comings and goings. And so to say perhaps that the church shouldn't be engaged in politics, well, that is just absurd. Because the kingdom of heaven, even Jesus incarnate here on earth, lived his life and is about the coming of the kingdom of God, so that everything has to do with how we live our lives. All of this has to do with how we love God, how we embody holy living in our world today. And that's politics. The language perhaps has been hijacked, like so many other things. And I think what we're really trying to say with some of that is, you know, maybe the church should avoid partisanship, like hardlining into one political party or another, because God's kingdom is the great kingdom in which our little kingdoms will never quite reflect properly, to mildly reference a wonderful essay from Wendell Berry, right? The Two Economies. Well, friends, if you're keeping score at home, you likely see there's never been a more important time to use your voice, I'm going to say, as people living particularly within the United States. It's just a cascade of things going on right now. And to be blunt, I mean, there's just a full-blown attack on the environment and on God's creation going on as so many policies are being dismantled that have been put in place for so long for these protections. And what is adjacent here and what is not always noticed is that, and I know we've done some episodes on this, is that creation justice is inseparable and intertwined, and right, because all this is an ecosystem, with racial justice, socioeconomic justice. Are you with me? All these issues are embedded in, of course, what it means to love our neighbor, what it means to lift up and care for the least of these, friends. We know this. We know this. And so before you hang up on this podcast, join me in a really wonderful discussion today on kingdom advocacy with Creation Justice Ministries' Madison Mayhew, who's been thinking about and doing this work for a pretty long time at this point. And so in this episode, which is a little raw, we are actually in Washington, D.C. together and have been hanging out for a week. And we're taking a stroll around the Capitol while pulling some threads on what it means to be a Christian who is politically advocating for God's creation. And let me give you the bottom line right now, friends, is that you can do it. You don't have to be an orator or put together with a suit and tie. You just have to be a human who lives here and is concerned. And more than ever, friends, it's concerning, and your voice is needed. So a real quick couple of housekeeping notes, cleaning the house. While we're recording, it got real windy in some spots there around the Capitol. So we had to adjust the audio a bit to mitigate that. So there are a couple drop-in, drop-outs in the audio, but it's all contained there with juicy goodness ready for a listen. Yeah, so there's a little bit of that going on. And also, this is coming out in the heels of Election Day for us here, where I'm at. And so there's so much to marinate on here, and this is just such a great conversation. So here we go. Okay, friends, we're on the move, and I'm here in view of the Capitol in Washington, D.C. with my good friend Madison Mayhew. Greetings.
Greetings. Hello. Thank you for having me.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm on your turf, actually. DC is Madison's turf.
To some degree, for my work, yes. I used to live here, but I now live a little bit up the street in Baltimore.
Love it. Yeah, we're in the jungles of DC right now. So if you hear noises of the wilderness, this could be like the closest we get to wilderness of DC, because literally where we're standing is between the Capitol building, which could be the jungle. Are you with me? And the actual botanical gardens. So if there is a wilderness, maybe we're in it. I don't know. Yeah, so really great. Maybe if you don't mind, so we're here to chat about, advocacy things and your work with Creation Justice Ministries, which I thought would be really fun. But honestly, before we do that, would you be willing to share just like a bit of your own story that I don't know and others don't know around, like, golly, how did you get here doing this? You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. Let me
especially as a person of faith. And it could be, you're welcome to do the long version and the short version, or whatever your heart's telling you.
Yeah, let me see. I'll try to do the middle version. So for some context, I grew up in a family that attended the Church of Christ, which is a little bit more on the evangelical fundamentalist side of things. Went to college at Lipscomb University, which is Church of Christ, and there really started learning about social justice and civil rights, and really for the first time started to connect the dots on faith and justice. And during that time, I also was introduced to an historical figure by the name of Angelina Grimke, who was a Quaker woman back in the age of slavery, and she became one of the very first female abolitionists, and was the first woman to address the state legislature in calling for the abolition of slavery.
Wow.
And reading her story and her sister's story and her family's story really, honestly, was such a really unique introduction for me to understand the connection of taking action and standing with the most vulnerable in a way that's in alignment with my faith upbringing. I eventually, in college, studied social work, and always felt really compelled to help folks. And the social work profession is really unique in that it not only equips people to help those who are in need, but really look at systems of injustice through a systems lens, understanding systems of oppression and power dynamics, and working to ultimately change policy. And so I felt really compelled to focus on the policy side of things, and which led me to a couple of different avenues, but ultimately got my master's in social work on the policy side, which was around the time that Donald Trump was elected the first time, and was really saw a lot of Christians support his election, and was really confused and frustrated by it. Felt very much like antithetical to what I had been taught growing up.
Okay. Yeah.
I began just to question a lot of things, went on my own deconstruction journey, and eventually found my way to the United Church of Christ in their DC office.
Mm-hmm.
And that was really the first time I saw firsthand how communities of faith were living out their call to justice and through policy and advocacy, and that was like a really healing experience for me because I was in this place of deep questioning and uncertainty of where I wanted to go, but it felt like a really natural alignment of what the questions I was asking and what I was interested in. And then at that time, became really interested in environmental policy and was understanding environmental justice and climate change. And I think my social work degree really helped me understand the intersectionality of climate change and in a way that has set me up to understand the policy side of things really well. And so I was at the UCC. That role ended. I eventually moved to a different organization called Interfaith Power and Might.
Mm-hmm.
That position ended. Long story short, and now I'm here at CJM.
Yeah.
That was a lot at once.
Yeah. Well, you've already done a tour of duty. It seems like across the work. Really great. I really appreciate you sharing that. And it sounds like, you had your own catalyst moment there in a way.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm gonna just for kicks and giggles, I'm gonna throw a curveball or maybe a speedball or something at you here off the bat.
Okay, here we go.
What would you say to a churchgoer who is asking the question, well, I think should churches really be involved in politics?
That's a great question. I think to me, the very baseline for my framework is, as people of faith, we are called to love our neighbor. And loving our neighbor must go beyond serving immediate needs, although that is a beautiful and important thing. But I think that we're called to look beyond, look at the source of the issue. It's one thing, the parable of you teach a man to fish and they are able to feed themselves for a lifetime. I think that's true in the sense of caring for those who are most vulnerable. We have a role to play in ensuring that the systems that are causing oppression for people who are going hungry, for people who are experiencing toxic pollution, for people who, don't have access to adequate housing, that we're playing a role in creating solutions that ensure that those people have their needs met for the long term.
Yes. Yeah. How can we talk about loving our neighbors and at the same time not speaking up when we're given the opportunity to use our voice to talk to representatives or to vote with Christian values?
Totally.
And and that's not a passive thing. And one of the things I love about your role is that you unpack that for us a little bit more. You kind of help draw down some of that action for us. And a lot of times when we think about what we can do, it just feels like, well, whenever it's time to vote, I'll show up to vote. I'll say yes, I'll say no.
Totally.
And send up a prayer.
Yeah.
So I wonder if you'd talk a little bit about your role with Creation Justice Ministries and what are some of the on-ramps and tools and things that you're working on.
Yeah, totally. So at CJM, I'm the policy and advocacy manager. So I support the collective work. CJM represents 41 major Christian denominations in their creation care work. So my job is to track all things policy at the federal level. So tracking congressional activity, administrative rulemaking, and make sure that we're doing our job to educate our community about what's happening, but also identify action opportunities if there is anything timely that we need to be speaking out about right now. In this current moment, it's a lot of defense. there are a lot of environmental policies that are being attacked or rolled back, and we're playing a role in trying to defend those really important policies. So we help make sure that our folks know what's going on, and try to help simplify it so that it's easy to understand, and give folks the tools to be able to take action themselves.
That's really great. So we're walking by the Capitol right now, and I'm wondering if they would let us in. Do you think they would let us in?
We would have
Your
to
professional opinion.
We'd have to go to the visitor center, but we could technically go in.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that's cool.
Not to the where the major meetings happen, but we could at least see the inside.
Oh, cool. I didn't know what you're going to be allowed with. I remember coming to DC for the first time in like 2002, which was quite the time to be coming to DC. Mm-hmm. And then like making my friend throw away all his gifts that he had bought.
Oh,
and
no.
well, he tried to hide them in the bushes. Anyway, it didn't work. Come here, look at this. That's someone has, so we're standing here next to a monument. Speaking of, someone has lost some jewelry.
Like an earring.
It looks like an earring, and I want to know if it's real gold or real diamonds. But I'm going to say they're not coming back for it.
Probably not.
So this is my gift to you, Madison. You can
Thank
pawn
you so
that.
much.
You can turn that into, can't say I didn't give you anything for recording with me.
Yes.
Yeah. So, yes. All right. We're continue on. So, 2 days ago, on Tuesday morning, you had previously coordinated for members of the board of Creation Justice Ministries to spend some time with some representatives on some issues. And, for me, I definitely never done that at the federal level. And, such a learning experience, such a learning curve. And with that whole thing, can we walk through it?
I don't think we can.
I don't see any signs, just some guys who might tackle us. Yeah, and so we, you coordinate that whole thing, and we break off into groups, and we have these issues, and it was just such a learning experience for me, and I think for many others who hadn't done this before, and probably for some others who had, and I think we have all these images in our mind that we've conjured up when we think of that experience, or and maybe a lot of feelings of like, I don't have what it takes to do this. I'm just a person. And but what I found quickly into the first kind of sit down was that, these are just people too, and we're all just talking about the same things we would maybe with our uncle at dinner, just with someone that it matters. And to a degree, maybe that's a little bit over the top, but anyway, I was thinking about that experience, and it was really funny because we're waiting outside of the first door, and my personal senator walked by, and you're like, Caleb, how's your senator? Totally unprepared. Thought about running and clobbering the situation, but I was like, no, we won't do that today. But yeah, I wonder if you'd share a little bit about what that process was like for you, trying to get these meetings, for us, and what that looked like. And I remember you said also that it's not as easy as it used to be.
Yeah. So we had about 15, 16 board members come for advocacy meetings, and we were trying to schedule meetings based on where folks were coming from, and also based on our priorities and different congressional targets, and ended up coming up with a pretty robust list of both Senate and House members. We had three different issues that we are focusing on. And I've been in this advocacy work, specifically in the faith community, since 2019. So I've made my way around the Capitol complex a couple of times, and have had lots of experience scheduling meetings, and historically have not had a ton of issues meeting with staffers. Typically when we do lobby meetings, they're usually with staffers and not the member of Congress themselves. And for whatever reason, in the last couple of years, it's been harder for staffers to get back to me to schedule meetings. They're way more committed to meeting with constituents, which isn't necessarily a bad thing.
Mm-hmm.
But it made it a little bit more challenging for our denominational representatives to meet with a wide range of Congress. And so we've just been processing the implications of that, and we're being moved to a different part of the Capitol grounds. But it was still successful. I think, there will be more opportunities in the future to think a little bit more strategically about what members we do meet with and who we try to bring to meet with members of Congress.
I like how he was just like, "Hey, you,
Yeah.
this way."
Yeah, they don't mess around.
Which that is really weird. We just came right outside that metal gate and the wind immediately stopped. We're passing one of the hundreds of groups.
School groups.
School youth.
The youth.
Bright-eyed 8th graders here to see history being made. So I noticed the other day walking through here how they have a bunch of wisteria growing all along that other, but like in bush form, which is impressive because lots of pruning required.
Yeah.
It was really pretty though. So the other day we're like, we hear the terms, I feel like, lobbying and lobbyists in life, and usually not in a great light. But the other day we're kind of lobbying for God's creation.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, totally.
But just without any money.
Yes.
And so you were sharing a little bit of that with me, but maybe you could speak a little bit more about how that looks like, maybe unfortunately, in our system right now, for those who maybe you're unaware or not around who gets access and who doesn't, and how maybe it's not equitable.
Yeah, totally. So take a little bit of a history lesson and go back to 2010 when the Supreme Court made the decision around Citizens United that ultimately gave corporations the ability to donate as much money as they wanted into our political system. And unfortunately, that has had some pretty big consequences on leveling consequences on the playing field on who has access to politicians. A lot of times we see members of Congress take lots of money from a wide range of corporations or super PACs or other entities that are run by private interests. And because of that, that influences who they want to spend their time with when they're having meetings. So a lot of times there are some members who are very strict about where they take their money from and don't take money from PACs, don't take money from corporations, which completely frees up their time to completely and solely focus on their constituents. But unfortunately, that's not the majority of the case. And so a lot of members of Congress, although they may meet with constituents, you see them being heavily influenced by these private entities and outside organizations. So we have, which creates, barriers. It's not just us having access to meetings, but it's constituents trying to raise their voices about, a particular project that's hitting their neighborhood that may, maybe the owners of that said project have donated to that member of Congress. So the member of Congress is then siding with the corporation versus their constituents. And unfortunately, until we have legislation that ultimately overturns Citizens United, we're going to be in this similar situation. And so we could have a whole other episode about campaign finance reform.
Yeah.
But that definitely goes into some of the dynamics that we've encountered.
Right. Yeah, and it's like when corporations become the constituents, you get a system that, feels pretty broken.
Totally.
Maybe, but not everyone's doing that as well.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. I mean, there are a few holdouts.
Yes.
That aren't taking that moolah.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
And I wonder if you could say more too about the quote unquote constituent power. And that was something I was curious about. because it's kind of some work to set up these meetings. But if you're a constituent, you have kind of an automatic in theoretically.
Yeah, it's I will say easier to get a meeting if you are a constituent. And I think there's a lot of misconceptions that you have to come to DC to have a lobby meeting, and that's not necessarily true. Um, a, your member of Congress has multiple in district offices, and if they're a senator, they have multiple offices across the state. If they're a representative, they probably have multiple offices across the district, which create opportunities for constituents to engage in where you live. And you can often reach out to those offices to schedule meetings, to meet with staff. They have staff solely dedicated to constituent services, so you have that opportunity. But coming to DC is a great opportunity too. But I think there are more ways to have that connection outside of DC, including a lot. They're not in DC 24/7, 365 days of year. They have work periods where they're dedicated to traveling around their district or traveling around the state to hear from constituents. Some do better at that than others. But I think, make sure that you're following your member of Congress's schedule and see if there are any opportunities to engage with them during that work period. There's so many, or even, one chance that we've seen, or one engagement opportunity that works fairly well, are congregational tours. If your community has done solar work or implemented any sort of green solution and you want to talk about it as a potential policy, influence, that is a great opportunity to invite a member of Congress to educate them and talk about why your faith community cares about creation. So there are multiple layers and multiple tiers for engaging with your member of Congress outside of Washington, D.C.
And I'll note too that a couple of our groups, because King Charles was in town,
Yes.
because that's a thing that happens.
Yes.
A lot of the representatives were like, let's go hang out and see what King Charles has to say.
Mm-hmm.
Since we might be getting one soon.
Yeah.
Sorry, bad joke. Cut. No. And yeah, so what happened was some of our groups ended up meeting with quote unquote staffers rather than representatives, right?
Totally.
And these are people who may be like in their 20s, even though they're very knowledgeable about the stuff. And so that can also be a common experience, right?
Oh, totally. Yeah. What often happens, I will say, it is harder to get a meeting with a member of Congress than it should be if you are a constituent. And so they do have staffers that work on specific portfolios that ultimately have the knowledge base that influences the member of Congress and their work and supports their work. But as you know, there's a million different issue areas that we cover in policy. And so it's helpful to have staffers who can specialize in a particular topic, and then becomes kind of like the expert in the office when they're engaging with constituents. They're the ones helping write letters in response to constituent inquiries, or maybe respond via phone, and often are the ones that meet with folks when they go to offices themselves.
That's helpful. Yeah, and also, so one of the things that maybe it's worth noting that we talked about a little bit is how there are committees and subcommittees.
Yes.
And I think this is the same for local legislative as well as federal level, right? That your representative may or may not be on the committee of said issue that maybe you want to talk to them about.
Yeah,
right?
Yeah, totally. So at the beginning of every Congress, members are assigned different committee roles. There are often multiple subcommittees of that committee, but a committee has jurisdiction over a particular issue. So if you sit on the Appropriations Committee, that's the folks that end up putting together our fiscal year budget for the year. And negotiate all the top line numbers. So if you're really concerned about the budget and your member sits on that committee, that is a really powerful place to be. If there's the House Natural Resources Committee, which they oversee a lot of issues related to drilling and our public parks. And so if your member sits on that committee and you care about conservation, it's a great way to engage with them on issues that you care about. That doesn't mean that it's not worthwhile to talk about to your members if they about an issue if they don't sit on a particular committee. It just means that you may have a higher chance of having an impact on a particular issue if there's a bill that's moving and has passed outside of committee. So to break it down a little bit, because I know this may not be as familiar to folks who may be outside of the DC area, going back to Schoolhouse Rock days.
Okay. Oh, yes. Bring it. All of it.
If there's a piece of legislation, in order for it to become law, it has to pass both the House and the Senate before it goes to the president's desk to be signed. But the very first process for it to move is for it to be introduced by a member of Congress. So let's say a representative has a bill that they want to work on. They'll introduce it. They may try to get some co-sponsors for the bill, and then it will be assigned a committee for review. And that committee will potentially, they'll talk about it. They may add any amendments or edit it in any way. And then if they end up voting it forward, it may be moved to another committee, but it may also move to the House floor for a vote. But in order for it to be moved to the House floor, it has to be the Speaker of the House is the one that can call it to the House floor for a full vote. So when it's in this process of movement, and there may be, you may have seen action alerts about a particular bill that say urgent, urgent, urgent. This is because usually a bill has passed out of committee and is making its way to the floor, and we need more members to have their eyes on it and to either support it or vote against it so that it doesn't move further in the progression line towards becoming final legislation. Does that make sense?
Yeah. So there's a bit of a slow, quick, I think, in it,
Totally. And I will say too, with how things have changed in Congress and just the political sphere over the past several years, Congress, I think this is the least effective Congress in history in terms of passing legislation.
Well, we had a record-breaking shutdown.
Yeah, that's still ongoing. Yes, so it's been a really, it's outside of really large funding packages, it's been really hard to move on a lot of bills right now. We have seen some pass that have been, not great. But overall, I think we're in this really strange period where there's just a lot of disagreements happening and not a lot of progress being made.
Yeah, it's a really tough spot in democracy, I feel like, right now. And I feel like the church has so much opportunity to show up. I think it's easy, hopefully not, but perhaps easy for someone to hear a conversation like this who may be kind of really hard on one side or the other, I'm going to say, and maybe this feels partisan or something, even a conversation like this. But I think the reality is that, well, we say all the time, there's so much nuance to, I think, good democracy.
Totally.
And I think maybe if we could put our finger on a singular problem, if there were such a thing, it would be how we've polarized complexity, humanity, relationality into these binaries when life just isn't that way.
Yeah, for sure.
And so that's where it kind of gets discouraging is I say, when I've seen people just give amazing testimonies to committees before about acting on the environment, and then in the end they're just like, okay, next. And it's like they didn't, it's like they had secret earbuds in and they didn't hear anything. But really, I think what's happening there is like these people who are talking are on the other side. So I'm just kind of checked out right now. And so, which is really, really unfortunate because life is nuance, and there's no, we've got to be willing to shuffle around, right, this issue and that issue, right? It doesn't belong to this party or that party. I think as Christians, we're looking at it from a perspective of the church and the kingdom of God. And I think the work of the church today, needs to be calling that out, and saying, well, hey, maybe it looks less like these party lines and more like, well, how are we loving our neighbor with this issue, and how are we loving our neighbor with this
Totally.
issue? And of course, that's easier said than done. But anyway, I guess what I'm saying is I feel like there's so much opportunity on the flip side for the people of God to be voices of bridge building
Yeah.
in this time more than anything else.
Yeah, I totally agree. And, this year is a midterm election year. And so every single representative is up for election. And I think that there's a really powerful opportunity to elect leaders that reflect the values that we care about. Doing research on whether they, stand alongside creation care priorities, and honestly ask the question, are they actively loving our neighbors? What does that look like for them in our community? And do I want to see these values lived out in Congress? And so this is a really important year for the election. I know that I totally recognize there's a lot of uncertainty about the midterms this year, especially where in DC, the day after the Supreme Court just gutted the Voting Rights Act even more. And that still doesn't allow us an excuse to not show up and to not continue to fight for the things that we actively care about. And we have a really big role to play in that space.
Yeah. So impressed by the treasure trove that's coming out of you right now of information here. If I'm so glad I'm recording, because this is like the only way I can take notes. Yes, very helpful. Well, speaking of, I wonder if you'd share maybe a little bit about, thinking about our one pagers of some of the issues that we were there talking to representatives about.
Yeah, totally. So during our Hill Day, we were focusing on 3 different priorities, which is a lot for a Hill Day. But there are a couple of things that are really important to our collective work around conservation and resilience. The first one is around protecting marine sanctuaries and marine protected areas. These are areas that are designated in the ocean as places for stewardship and overall conservation that protect a really precious ecosystem that ultimately has ripple effects for the surrounding coastal communities. This administration is currently rolling back a lot of these protections and opening them up for offshore drilling or even deep sea mining, and placing these really precious marine ecosystems in harm's way. And not just, I think it's easy to think like, oh, the ocean's far away. Like, what does this have to do with me? But I think ultimately it boils down to, I often recently I've been thinking a lot about conservation as a act of public health. And the more we extract and the more we attack these ecosystems, it's going to come back and affect us in ways that we may not even fully understand yet. And when we have really strong protections in these marine areas, it helps these ecosystems thrive, and the fish are healthier and bigger, which helps the local economies that rely on, seafood or tourism, and has really amazing benefits overall. And so we have a really important role to play in ensuring that these really sacred places are protected. So we met with Congress or a few offices to ask that they continue strong protections and fund the agencies that oversee these areas really well and strong. The second conservation priority was around there's a really sneaky legislative tool called the Congressional Review Act that's being used right now to attack our public lands. And the Congressional Review Act was initially created for small businesses to review and analyze regulations that are impacting them. And it's only been used a handful of times, and now it's being used. The Government Administrative Office, getting into the weeds here, they expanded the definition as to what the Congressional Review Act can be used for. And I know we're really getting in the weeds and nerding out a little bit, so bear with me.
No, it's cool.
The Congressional Review Act now is being used to attack public land management plans, which are done over a period of usually 5 years to review, to create these tools that ultimately say how public land should be managed. And usually tribal leaders are involved, researchers, scientists, any community leaders, to really create something that's robust, that is done, in an equitable way to protect and steward these lands. And the administration, or this Congress, has been introducing CRAs to repeal these public land management plans and ultimately open up these really important places to extraction.
Yeah.
Or just, because they want to. And
Right.
it's really heartbreaking. And one of them in play right now is a CRA to attack or to repeal the public land management plan for Grand Staircase Escalante in Utah. And Utah is a treasure trove of really beautiful landscapes, and we're concerned not just about this one place, but their proposals all across the country. So just trying to raise awareness about CRAs and their abuses of them at the current moment, and urging Congress to vote against any CRA proposal.
Yeah, that's so good, and very helpful. In the show notes of this episode, I'm going to make sure to link one-pager documents that we have that are actually really helpful. And maybe what Madison is sharing sounds complicated, but it's really not when it comes down to it, because once you kind of get it. But I'll be sure those will be in the show notes, that you can scroll down after listening to this and click on those and see those. Those are really helpful tools. And those are the same one-pagers we actually left with legislators on Tuesday, right?
Yep, totally. Yeah. And there's one more that I'll just talk about quickly.
No, yeah.
There's I'm sure a lot of folks are familiar with our Federal Emergency Management Agency. I may be getting the acronym wrong. FEMA for short.
Yeah.
They're the ones that help communities with disaster response after they're hit with a climate disaster or anything of that nature, where folks are really their homes may be destroyed, their communities are significantly impacted, and they come in and provide aid and assistance, whatever that may look like. And recently, under this administration, they've significantly gutted FEMA funding, which has made it a lot more challenging for communities to receive aid in the face of disaster. You may remember Hurricane Helene that impacted communities in Tennessee and North Carolina. A lot of those communities weren't able to receive aid from FEMA for weeks after, forcing folks a lot of times to form mutual aid groups and really help each other out and supporting each other in ways that they could until federal assistance could come in. And right now, FEMA sits under the Department of Homeland Security, and that has created a series of bottlenecks, making it a lot more challenging for FEMA to really provide the services in a robust way that really meets people where they are. And so we were supporting the FEMA Act of 2025, which would make FEMA its own agency, and ultimately give it a little bit more freedom to really provide those robust services. There's a lot more to it that I'll forget off the top of my head, but the ultimate point of it is that it would just make it easier for it to do its job.
Yeah, absolutely. That one, especially, and the MPAs, the Marine Protected Areas, just seem like such low-hanging fruit.
Totally.
There's no reason in my mind really why this shouldn't be more bipartisan support.
Yeah.
Especially caring for the least of these. There's so many faith connections there, which is why we're talking about them.
Yeah.
Because this is about, like you said, loving our neighbors.
Yeah.
And that's really good. Thank you for sharing all that. I know that's a lot to keep. That's a lot to keep in your head. I'm curious, maybe what word of encouragement you might share to someone who this is totally new for them, and this is not the waters they're swimming in, but they feel it in their gut that this is part of what it means to be Christian, perhaps now more than ever.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I just wonder what you might say to that person,
Yeah.
or grief, or just like whatever you're feeling.
Yeah. Well, I think that if anyone is curious about engaging in advocacy for the first time, I would say welcome. We need you.
Yes.
I think now, especially more than ever, and I think there has been a series, I've seen a lot of people having their eyes expanded, or maybe their ears opening up a little bit more fully in recent years, because of how stark and quickly changes are being made in regards to the environment, or regards to other issues that we may care about that really affect our communities. And I think that there are so many opportunities to engage on issues, whether it's with CJM or even locally with a local Sierra Club or League of Conservation Voters. There are a lot of organizations who can provide tools and resources so that you're not doing it alone.
Absolutely.
And I think there may be a fear that it's overwhelming, but I promise you there's someone out there who's willing to walk alongside with you. If it's me, lovely. But I also recommend, there are a lot of other folks out there who can offer their support. I think for anyone who may be feeling overwhelmed, which I certainly have to navigate myself a lot of the times, I've been really trying to root myself and remind myself that we've, as a country, have been through really challenging times before. Like we are in a politically tumultuous time. We're in a really just overall challenging era, but we have come through dark periods before, and really leaning on the lessons learned from organizers and advocates and faith leaders during those periods before, because it's really easy to feel like we haven't made any progress. But if you look back, of course we have. And so I think remembering that, like gleaning from our ancestors and following in the footsteps of those who have really leaned into the idea of leaving a better world beyond them. I think right now I'm in my 30s. I don't know if I want kids, but I still think about their future, or my friends' kids' future, and what kind of world I'm leaving for them. And I want to be a good ancestor. And so I think as people of faith, thinking about our role and what we're creating and what we're leaving behind for future generations can often be fuel for my spirit. It can also be really challenging too, because of where we are. But I think remembering our origins and our roots is really important in that too.
Yeah. So good. Yeah. And I'll say the group that, I've been able to onboard with this locally is my local Nashville chapter of Interfaith Power and Light.
Nice.
So, I had done nothing before I connected with them back when. And, they've got, really great folks. Of course, that's going to differ depending on if your state has a chapter and what they're up to. Yeah, just there are people, and I think that's a good word. Like, find those people, because they're there, and you're one of those people.
Yeah.
So connect with Madison, friends. Madison is a resource for your congregation, your denomination, through Creation Justice Ministries. Flood her inbox. No, but I do think that I am just so appreciative of you and the work that you're doing. And I know, even from your perspective, probably like others, it can feel just like a voice in the wilderness.
Yeah.
But lots of, there are lots of voices in the wilderness, and I think that we're all heading toward the promised land together, and that's what we got to keep in mind.
Totally, yeah.
And sometimes we'll stop along the way and hit a rock and get some water. And sometimes we'll be thirsty for a minute, but we're here together.
Yeah, absolutely. And I really appreciate, it's conversations like these that keep me really hopeful. So I really appreciate the conversation.
Yeah, thank you.
Cool.
Right on, friends. This is your chance to take those next steps, right? This is the next step tip for today. connect, make some connections, do the work of what it would look like to show up where you are locally on some of these issues, right? Take those concerns to the next level. Sometimes here we're composting, sometimes we're talking to senators. Are you with me? Because all of it is important. And one quick note to say, I know we talked a little bit about in this episode of how your representative may not be on a certain committee, but just like to point out, in Madison, we were talking later, and to make sure that you know it's always important, no matter the issue, no matter whether your representative is on said committee or not, it is always important to raise your concerns as a constituent, and your representative has the power to bring those forward to important places. So I just wanted to say that. We are dropping some of those links that we talked about in the show notes for you all. Friends, connect with Creation Justice Ministries. And I'm going to go the extra mile here and say, if you are so inclined, consider donating to Creation Justice Ministries, friends, because they are doing the work. And this is the work that I obviously believe in and is so important for our time right now. So consider doing that. We'll leave a donation link in the show notes. All right, friends, until next time.